Morning folks and welcome back. I'm out today for a walk at one of my favourite little spots. It's the old World War II airfield at Fersfield. This is just one of hundreds of airfields built during the war in East Anglia and along the east coast. It just happens to be the closest one to where I live, which is why I'm here. I'm not a historian, but I just thought it would be nice to show you around and give you a little bit of insight into the history of the place. Plus it's a good excuse to stretch the old legs. It was built between 1942 and 1943 as a heavy bomber base, but before work could commence on the airfield itself, access had to be created. From the main road between Diss and Thetford, a new road was created using concrete construction just like the airfield in order to get heavy plant up here to build the airfield itself. The airfield was built in the classic A-shaped configuration with a main runway of 2,000 yards running northeast to southwest and two shorter runways of 1,400 yards running north-south and east-west. It had two large T2 hangars, one of which is still surviving today, and 50 loop dispersals or hard standings for aircraft. And the main technical site and the accommodation blocks were all situated to the south of the airfield, some of which still survive to this day. Originally called RAF Windfarthing, the name changed to Fersfield when the air station was passed over to the Americans in 1944. And although built to accommodate large four-engined aircraft, it never became a fully fledged operational bomber base. Instead, it had a much more secretive role to play during the war. I'm just walking around the perimeter track at the moment, which you can see stretched out ahead of us here. This was a trackway that ran all the way around the outside of the airfield, acting as a taxiway for aircraft, and it would have originally been much wider than this. The farmer has left one sort of block wide of concrete, if you see what I mean, going around the perimeter track and all the runways, which is nice because you still get an impression of what the place used to look like. It just would have been much wider. To our left here we've got one of the old runways. This is the old 1,400 foot north to south runway. Ran from the perimeter track on this side to the perimeter track on the other side, and the other two runways, the main 2,000 foot runway and the other shorter one, ran across it, dissecting it, so it gives the impression of a giant A. This is one of the surviving dispersal loops, and there were 50 of these D-shaped hard standings dotted around the airfield, and they just acted as parking spaces for aircraft basically. Yeah, I think there's only two remaining. One of the great things about it being the edge strip of concrete that was left is that a lot of the old drains and ironworks have survived. This is one of the original perimeter track drain covers. Just over my left shoulder in this field is the site where one of the T2 hangars used to sit. There were two of them on this site, one here on the northern side of the airfield and one on the south, which is still there. They were huge buildings with big sliding doors, big enough to swallow a B-17 or a B-24 bomber in for maintenance work. And yeah, it used to sit here, and there was concrete leading to it, hard standings and everything, but it's all gone now. It's all been ploughed up and returned to agriculture. Just over in the distance there you can see the old technical site for this airfield, and that's where all the goings on went on. This place was highly top secret during the war. It was part of an operation called Aphrodite, which was run by the US Army Air Force, and Operation Anvil run by the US Navy. And basically what happened here is they took battle damaged bombers, B-17s and B-24s primarily, and stripped them out, loaded them full of high explosives and flew them off from here with a crew of two, a pilot and co-pilot. And once they had got them safely away from the UK mainland, they used to fly them by remote control as robot aircraft, as drones, and fly them into key Nazi sites, you know, V1 rocket sites, V2 rocket sites, submarine pens, anything like that, you know, high sort of value targets, if you like. The operation wasn't successful at all. Not a single aircraft hit target, and there were some tragic accidents resulting in the loss of life of several US airmen. Operation Aphrodite began on the 4th of August 1944 with 2 aircraft taking off from here, loaded full of explosives. One of those aircraft got into difficulty, however. The plane, a B-17, crashed into woodland in Suffolk, and the crater created by the impact of the plane with all that explosive on board was 100 yards across. 2 days later, a Navy B-24, as part of Operation Anvil, took off from here, piloted by Lieutenant Joseph Kennedy, brother of the future US President John F. Kennedy. Tragically, that plane blew up unexpectedly on its way to the Suffolk coast, killing both crew members. That track there originally led to the bomb dump, situated on the northern side of the airfield, well away from the accommodation and technical sites. Now, like a lot of these places, this airfield is privately owned. I have got permission from the landowner to be here and to film and stuff, but there is a footpath that runs directly across the airfield, so you can walk across and you can see a lot of what I'm showing you from that footpath. We've got another one of the old hard standings here, obviously being used by the farmer for storage. We're standing right at the very western tip of the airfield here, where the perimeter track swings back around and heads in an easterly direction, and we're right at the end of that main runway. It used to stretch off for 2,000 yards in that direction, past that copse and the bigger woodland in the background, neither of which were here during the war. Behind me here is the old technical site. This is where those old battle-damaged aircraft were brought in and patched up and stripped out ready for their deadly missions. Although these large buildings at the front here are modern, they're owned by Simpsons and used for grain storage, there is a secret hidden little gem tucked away behind them. Although it's been reclad, that is one of the original T2 hangars. The doors are obviously original, the runners are all still there. The cladding and the roof have been replaced, but the framework is all still there. Not bad for having sat there for 75 years. There are a few other surviving wartime buildings in this little area here, and evidence of where other buildings once stood, old concrete slabs and hard standings, but please do bear in mind this is private property. If you head into the village of Fersfield from here, you'll see on the right hand side one of the old accommodation block sites, and there are a couple of very well preserved Nissen huts there that a local builder is currently renovating. When the Americans left, it returned to being an RAF station and had one more key role to play during the war. It was a launch station for a daring low-level mosquito raid on the Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen. However, that was another story of tragedy. One of the lead aircraft crashed into a bridge on approach and crashed into a school. And the following aircraft, assuming that that was the target, levelled it with their usual degree of deadly accuracy. war, hey? I've come to a point just past the technical area where the control tower used to be. It was torn down in the 1960s, but it used to sit out in that field there, about 100 yards from where we're standing now. And as a poignant reminder of where it once stood, there's a great big pile of wartime brickwork here, all 1940s bricks with plaster and paintwork on. Not from the control tower, I don't think, but definitely the same period. As well as the drains, you'll also see loads of these along the outside of the airfield. I have no idea what they used to hold. A circular hole in the top, a bit of metal there. I don't know, a light maybe? We're now standing at the other end of that 1400 yard north-south runway that we were standing at the other end of right at the beginning of the walk. The perimeter track actually goes that way, but there's not a lot to see around the back there. It's just a loop that comes back to where we started from, and it's very much like what you've already seen. But there is something up here along this runway that I want to show you. A real bonus here, the farmer has cut a strip of hay running up the side of the old concrete section that's left of the runway, but that's pretty much the width of the original runway. Whether he's done that on purpose to mark where it used to be, I don't know. Laid that bit aside for grass and for hay, but that is pretty much how wide the original runway used to be, so it gives you an impression. There we go, that's what I'm looking for. Don't know how well that'll come out on film, but here we've got a date. This was scratched into the wet concrete when it was poured by the contractor, when this airfield was made, when it was built. And that's the 10th of the 11th, 43, 10th of November. So they were building this over the winter. We've also got an initial underneath that looks like maybe an S and an H. Whether that was the guy who actually poured this slab, who knows. But obviously there were several slabs wide. This is just one strip, like it is around the perimeter. That was an awful lot of concrete. No wonder they had to build a road to get all their gear up here first. But yeah, each one of these slabs is dated, but not all of them have survived as well as that. This gives you a good idea of scale. We're just at the point where the main 2,000 yard runway crossed over this shorter north-south one, and you can see that there's a change in the angle of the concrete slabs. This here is the edge, the extreme edge of that main runway, and it extended up to where you can see that remaining bit of concrete just up there. Well, that is me nearly at the end of the loop. The airfield had a very short spell after the war as a racing track. Used to race cars around here before it was finally returned to agriculture, and it's been the same ever since. It's a lovely place for a walk. On a day like today, or in the winter when there's snow on the ground, gorgeous. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.